delighted to be here today. This is the day that social workers gather to celebrate social work. It's an event that's near and dear to my heart, and I think is an event that inspires on an annual basis. So I keep coming back for the inspiration and the collegiality that's provided at this event. It's wonderful.
I'm a board member of CSWA, and I was there when Frances Feldman helped start CSWA, when Jim Carles had the idea of a Social Workers Hall of Fame. But there were some concerns about the name Hall of Fame, and so the Hall of Distinction is what it came to be known as. I think it's really important because unlike the Academy Awards or the Hall of Fame, we are recognizing social workers who do real work. They're not actors, they're not performers, they're not athletes, and the work they do to help the lives of children, families, and our communities is so important. And today we're going to recognize their importance and some really key people who have contributed so much to our world.
Well, you know, it's really delightful for me to be back here at the Hall of Distinction 2014, having been recognized just last year. It is one of the highest honors that a social worker can receive in the state of California, and it's very humbling to be included amongst so many that have worked for so long to make California and our country a better place. So I want to congratulate all of this year's winners and look forward to hearing their stories.
This brings together social work programs and schools from across California to honor the very valuable contributions that social workers have made to California social welfare. This event is sort of, I think, the premier networking opportunity in addition to honoring their work, but it never fails to move me. It really brings us back to our roots. It reminds us why we're social workers and what we originally committed to. And I'm so honored that today we have a record number of students here. So the people that attend sponsor student tickets, and that tells me that social workers, they have the memo. We have to cultivate the next generation of social workers to pick up the challenge to honor all the great work that social work has done in the state of California. So I'm so honored to be here, and I thank everyone who's looking at this video presentation of our wonderful induction ceremony for 2014. Thank you.
This is a very esteemed honor, only given to a very few social workers in California. Would you tell us what it means to you to be recognized?
Well, it's a very humbling honor, and I think it really has to do more with my persistence and perseverance than it does with any successes that I've had. It's really difficult to do good social work in a capitalist system where resources for our clients are so limited and where it's so difficult to make change.
It's a great honor and actually quite exciting to be here as one of the inductees in the Social Work Hall of Distinction. Actually, I'm quite nervous because the other 5 honorees are amazing individuals, but to be considered as part of that fraternity is very special, especially because I'm a social worker, I've grown up in this field, and to be with some of the legends and the pioneers. And I might add, those that have been inducted before us are in many ways the true pioneers of early social work here in California. So I find it hard to believe that I merit this and that I've been around long enough to earn this, but I will accept it graciously, and also on behalf of all the young students who we hope to mentor to take over our work when we're long gone, but hopefully not forgotten.
You know, when Jim Carles came up with this idea many years ago, it was inspiration, because social workers are rarely recognized. Even the great social workers are rarely recognized. And to have this program and this event for so many years, it's like continuously inspires me, but also many, many other social workers. So I look forward to hearing the stories of each and every one of the inductees, and I look forward to hearing it every year.
I have a long association with the archives, and I remember the days when Frances Feldman and Ruth Britton were just getting this thing up and going. It's come a long, long way since then, as you can tell from the great turnout, and it's so heartening to see so many people committed to preserving the history and the dignity of the social work profession in the state of California. too little of that is done. We should recognize our own more than we do. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the 2014 California Social Work Hall of Distinction induction ceremony. Welcome, welcome. I realize we have a few people in the line, but hopefully you'll be able to return to your seats as soon as possible. Thank you. Okay, so welcoming you to our wonderful induction ceremony. It always moves me. I'm so honored to be here. All the work of the committee members, all the work of Katie Johnson and her staff. It's just an honor to be here. So what I want to do is a couple things and then hand it off to Esther Gillies. So I'd like to acknowledge and welcome my fellow committee members. We have many committee members, but we only have several of them that are here today. So I'd like to ask them to please stand, and in the interest of time, if you could please hold your applause until everybody stands, and then we'll recognize them all together. So first off, I have Francis Capel. Francis? Okay. Ben Cuellar. Ben, please stand. Suzanne Dvorak-Peck. Manuel Fimbres. Manuel, there you are. Okay, Esther Gillies. Jim Kelly. I know that Jim's probably on his way. Joseph Nunn. Catherine Ralph. And Jan Lee Wong. Let's please acknowledge these Hall of Distinction committee members. They're a very hardworking committee, and many of you are here because of their efforts, and they're also their solicitation on co-sponsorship. And speaking of the last person that I recognized, Jan Lee Wong, we also want to thank the California NASW for sharing their space and making this available for us, for promoting this event in all their materials with their membership, and especially everybody who came to the conference. Let's thank California NASW. Thank you, Jan Lee. Really appreciate that. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge all the co-sponsors. Now, this was a record year for co-sponsorship. We cannot do this event alone. And all the schools and individuals and organizations that have come with us to co-sponsor this event, I'd like to thank them. I'm going to list them off by the organization and also the decision maker. I'd ask you to do the same thing. Hold your applause to the very end, and then we'll acknowledge them all together. So first off, I have the California Deans and Directors of the School of Social Work, also known as CAD. And then second, we have California State University, Dominguez Hills School of Social Work, and that's Makita Graham. Then we have California State University, Fullerton. Head of that program is David Chanot. California State Long Beach School of Social Work, Christian Molidar. California State University, LA, Sion Ree, but she couldn't be with us today. Many people were also attending the Council on Social Work Education. So Sion is not here, but Victor Manalo is here. So Victor Manalo is representing that school. And then we have California State University, Stanislaus, Robin Ringstadt. And we have Esther Gillies, who's a sponsor in her own right, who is retired from the USC School of Social Work, and she's also the president of our California Social Welfare Archives. Then from Fresno State University, we actually have two sponsors. We have the Department of Social Work Education, headed by Virginia Rondero Hernandez, and we also have a sponsorship from their Social Welfare Education Research and Training Center, headed by David Foster. Next is Loma Linda University, Department of Social Work and Social Ecology, headed by Beverly Buckles. And then we have the NASW chapter, headed by Jan Lee Wong. Thank you again for your sponsorship. And speaking of NASW and past presidents, we're honored to have several past presidents here. I'd like to honor Shirley Gentilini, Jim Kelly, who's on his way, Sue Peck, Mary Kay Oliveri, I'm sure she's on her way too, and the President-elect Catherine Ralph. Next up, we have San Diego State University and San Diego State, as well as their Center for Alcohol and Drug Studies, and their Driving Under the Influence program, and that is headed by Melinda Hohman, who's here today. San Francisco State University School of Social Work is also a co-sponsor, headed by Eileen Levy. And we have San Jose State University School of Social Work, headed by Jack Wall. Then we also have Suzanne Dvorak-Peck, who's also a co-sponsor in her own right, and we thank her for also sponsoring the video production today, which is very important for putting the word out about our work on our website. Suzanne is representing the International Federation of Social Workers, for which she is an ambassador, and she's also a member of the Hall of Distinction and the Archives. Next, we have the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, Department of Social Welfare, headed by Todd Franke. And we have the UC Berkeley School of Social Welfare, headed by Dean Jeff Edelson. And then finally, we have our USC School of Social Welfare, headed by one of our honorees, Dean Marilyn Flynn. Thank you, everybody, for your sponsorship. Now, speaking of all these great social work programs across the state, I want to thank everybody who brought a student ticket and sponsored it. Because of your generosity, we have 6 schools of social work represented here, and we have the next generation of social work leaders. So I want to thank you, say keep purchasing those student tickets because they're very valuable. The students are at a couple different tables over here, so we thank you very much for being here, and we want you to spread the word about the good work of the Hall of Distinction and the Social Welfare Archives. So at this point in the program, we usually talk about what is the Hall of Distinction, what's our mission and purpose, and how are we related to the California Social Welfare Archives. But a special treat we have for you this year is a short, very moving video that was made for us this year that describes the relationship between the Hall of Distinction and the California Social Welfare Archives. So in a moment, we're going to show that, and then I will turn it over to Esther Gillies, who will be your MC for the rest of the event. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
In 1979, the California Social Welfare Archives, CSWA, was established by a small group of dedicated social workers who were deeply committed to ensuring that the theories, knowledge, and understanding achieved by their generation were preserved for future scholars, social welfare advocates, and social workers. That the countless advances achieved in social welfare during past decades would not fade away and be forgotten. And that past and present information would always remain available to inform students, historians, and those influencing programs, legislation, and social justice in California. CSWA has evolved into a statewide, nonprofit organization affiliated with the USC School of Social Work and the USC Doheny Memorial Library Special Collections Department. Today, CSWA curates a rich, one-of-a-kind collection of social welfare documents and oral histories, which enables users to examine linkages between the past and present and develop deeper understandings of today's issues and create a historical foundation from which to address future social welfare problems and solutions. The archives houses over 400 collections of historical social welfare documents, some dating back to the 1880s. For example, CSWA holds the records of Rancho Los Amigos Hospital, which began as Los Angeles County's poor farm and became an internationally renowned rehabilitation hospital.
The CSWA files were all extremely useful for my dissertation on post-World War II medical care systems in the United States. Materials like those in your social welfare archives are enormously helpful because they allow one to excavate the rich local dimension of major historical institutions. I was also able to use the materials to refine my scavenger hunt. I wrote down lots of names, policies, and groups that I'd never heard about, and now I can go out and search for them.
CSWA's ever-expanding collection of over 125 oral history interviews, conducted over the past 3 decades, document the history and lessons of influential social workers and social welfare programs. These audio and video recordings have been accessed by thousands of visitors to the CSWA holdings and websites.
I've had many wonderful conversations with my grandparents and with my parents, but you know, those conversations are all lost now because they were never recorded. The oral histories are something that we're going to treasure for years to come because these are not personal memories as much as they are memories of people that have made important and significant contributions to social work practice and policy.
The California Social Work Hall of Distinction creates an ongoing legacy of the accomplishments of extraordinary social workers who have made significant and enduring contributions to California social welfare. Honorees are selected annually by a statewide panel of social workers and are inducted into the hall, where the impact of their exceptional contributions is documented and preserved for future generations. Today, social work schools throughout California include the study of historical figures and social welfare innovators whose biographies and interviews can be found on the Hall of Distinction website. Each year, CSWA also presents George Nickel Awards, named after its founder, to outstanding contributors to the health and welfare of California. The Francis Lomas Feldman Excellence in Education Award was established in 2010 to acknowledge exceptional contributions to social work education in California. Join us today to support the success and the future of the CSWA. Please visit www.usc.edu/CSWA.
Advances, advances. There's always something new. You've just witnessed the premiere of the new CSWA video, courtesy of Total Spectrum Advertising, this year enabling us to show rather than tell you about the CSWA. Thank you to James Bogenreef, a member of the Board of Counselors at the USC School of Social Work, who donated his agency's time and resources to provide this video for us. Good afternoon. I'd like to add my welcome to the 2014 Hall of Distinction induction ceremony today. I'm Esther Gillies, president of the California Social Welfare Archives, and your host for this afternoon. That means I'll be making general introductions, and the specific introductions are presenters today. And my job really is to move the program along during the next hour or so. To get us underway, I would like to ask the California Social Welfare Archives board members who are here today to stand, and after all are standing, then we can applaud. Rafael Angulo, if you'd stand please. Suzanne Dworak-Peck, Alma Folks, Colleen Friend, Heather Halpern, Asha, and I can't not say your last name at this point. I will have it down pat by the end of the program. David Kuroda, Helen Maxwell, Michael Johnson, and Phyllis Massing. Thank you very much for being an extraordinary board. I'd also like to acknowledge some special guests, prior inductees to the Hall of Distinction who are in attendance today. Andy Diepa. Andy, you want to stand? A class of 2013. Manuel Fimbrace, class of 2009. Rino Patti, class of 2012. Dolores Rodriguez, class of 2010. And Mariko Yamada, class of 2013. As always, the 2014 inductees into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction are all social workers, a requirement for membership in the hall. They were nominated by social workers and others working in the area of social welfare from across California. Nominations were reviewed and inductees selected by the Hall of Distinction Committee, composed of social workers from throughout the state, from San Diego to the south to Chino in the north, and representing academia, research, administration, individual and group practice, and all the areas across the broad spectrum of social work practice in California. From the many nominations submitted in January, 6 were selected for induction into the Hall of Distinction this year. To begin, I would like to welcome to the podium Dr. Melinda Hohman. Melinda's here somewhere. She's the director and professor at the School of Social Work, San Diego State University, where she has worked since 1995, teaching courses in substance abuse treatment, motivational interviewing, and social work practice. She will be introducing 2014 inductee Georgi DiStefano. Dr. Hohman.
Many years ago, and I hate to think of how many, when I was a young social work student, I remember being told by a professor to never work with alcoholics. I don't remember the reason, though I imagine it was because of stigma and negative stereotypes. It may also have been that the area of addictions tended to be largely peer-run, with somewhat of a suspicion, and maybe rightly so, of professionals. Fortunately, I didn't listen to that advice, and I ended up working in addictions with teen clients, and I really loved it. Little did I know that across the country from where I was on the East Coast, that on the West Coast, addiction had a friend in social work. This is our awardee. We have nominated her as she has truly been a pioneer and leader in the work with this population, continually bringing the social work perspective and skills into her clinical work. She has brought hope and recovery to thousands of clients. She is an LCSW. She received her BA with highest honors from Richmond College, City University of New York, and her MSW from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. I don't know how she ended up in California, but we're lucky to have her. Her experience extends over 30 years, from working as a therapist, a program manager, in employee assistance programming and outpatient treatment, to running a large DUI program that serves over 3,000 clients a month. Her work has gotten the attention and earned the trust of those in the recovery community. In 2005, she was invited by AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, to be an honored guest at the Board of Trustees at the annual international convention that was held in Toronto, Canada that year. There, she was one of 20 honorees from around the world. Her passion and skills in addiction work have long been recognized by professionals as well. She has taught the California NASW addictions course for over a decade, and that has always been well received. She served on the California Women's Commission on Alcohol and Other Drug Dependencies. She is currently a member of our state DUI advisory board. In this, her work focuses on advocating for inclusion of assessment and intervention of health, mental health, and other psychosocial problems, not just looking at the role of alcohol in the driver's life. Again, she brings a social work perspective that includes the whole person. Our awardee has been invited to train across the U.S. as well as with international audiences, including in Greece, Japan, and Paraguay. I have had the honor over the last decade to publish and research with her a model of treatment that she developed called the Paradigm Developmental Model of Treatment. She is currently an adjunct professor at San Diego State University in the School of Social Work. Our awardee was honored in 2011 by receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award in Social Work from the NASW Region E In 2012, she received recognition as a Master Social Work Addictions Counselor. She certainly is a master. As stated earlier, her work has impacted thousands of clients, and she has impacted social work practitioners as well. She has brought respect and social work to the forefront in a practice that was once stigmatized. She truly belongs in the Social Work Hall of Distinction. It is my honor to present the Social Work Distinction Award to L. Georgi DiStefano.
Thank you all so much. If I knew that there was going to be video on both sides, I would have tried a little harder to lose weight. I want to thank Colleen Friend, the chair of the Social Work Hall of Distinction Committee, the distinguished members of the committee for this wonderful honor. Esther Gills, the president of the Social Welfare Archives, and Katie Johnson, the program manager of the archives, who worked with each of us today to prepare us for this day. Thank you both for your generosity. I'd like to thank my fellow recipients. This experience is all the more precious and sweet to be included in this distinguished group, where so many significant accomplishments to advance social work practice has occurred. I'd like to thank Melanie Barker, LCSW, the new executive director of SDSU DUI, for her co-nomination and for continuing to advance the research for the treatment model I conceptualized and for her advocacy of treatment standards in California. Thank you, Mel. To my family that is here to support me today, Doris, my spouse and partner, who has been on this journey with me for 40 years. She is a wonderful social worker, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for your love and support. To my stepdaughter, granddaughter, nephew, and wonderful colleagues and dear friends who journeyed here to share this day with me, you are the village that has provided the life force, the energy and enthusiasm that has sustained me over this 38-year career. Thank you so much. And lastly, to Dr. Mindy Hohman, the director of San Diego State University School of Social Work, for this nomination, and for the many years of encouragement in developing the paradigm developmental model, and for co-authoring the first book and various articles, and for conducting the research necessary to support the efficacy of this model. I am forever in your debt. Teaching and social work have always been the two great loves of my professional life. Because I wanted to teach and train counselors in the delivery of treatment services in the field of addiction, I was forced to conceptualize what to do and when to do it. I will always be grateful to Dr. Anita Harbert, the former director of San Diego State University's School of Social Work, who told me, you have to write about these treatment concepts. Her advice and direction, she was my boss, over the subsequent 14 years has brought me to this day. I had to think about and think through and synthesize the components of the treatment approach I was proposing. Dr. Hohman very generously would meet with me weekly to begin the arduous task of writing. Did I mention I had nearly a phobia about writing? I could talk up a storm, but I was an absolute disaster in the early days with writing. It was the counselors in our program that spurred me on. They really believed we were onto something, and they wanted materials. And they also wanted them in Spanish and as soon as possible. For over 15 years, I taught at the NASW courses on substance abuse for pre-licensure, and this really became a laboratory. The challenging questions, the insights, the need for a treatment guide further motivated me. Once the model was developed, the hard work really began. We had to develop scales and validate the scales, teach our approach, and write about the process. We published the first book on the model in 2010. When we finally published the PTMD group topic book in 2012, it represented 28 years of thinking about this topic. I presented my first grand rounds on group therapy for addiction treatment in 1984 at Mesa Vista Hospital in San Diego, California. Aaron Beck, the father of cognitive behavioral therapy, came to San Diego in 1988 and observed me conducting group therapy with substance abusers using this method. And that was prior to him writing the book on cognitive therapy and substance abuse. In 1991, I began teaching these methods in Japan, and my last trip was 2 years ago. And so you can see from this that my focus for many years has been to develop the techniques that would work with substance abusers in group therapy. An important component of the model, and one that I am totally committed to, is the understanding that mental health issues and substance abuse are interrelated and must both be addressed for recovery to be successful. For a number of years, I sat on the California State Advisory Board for Alcohol and Drugs that oversee DUI programs in the state of California. To be quite frank, in the 1990s and 2000s, there was not a DUI program in this state that addressed co-occurring disorders or the mental health concerns of their clients. Now, you must put this in perspective. When I was director at San Diego State, we had 3,000 clients a week. The other 3 DUIs in San Diego had another 7,500, and that was just San Diego. There are dozens of DUI programs in the state treating literally thousands of clients on a weekly basis. And yet these DUI programs ran the risk. Each of these people or in DUI programs run the risk of another DUI. And the co-occurring disorders is a major reason why people may again not be able to stay clean and sober and repeat the behavior of drinking and driving. That issue would endanger their lives as well as ours. These DUIs had the opportunity to address a major contributing factor for repeat failure and recidivism, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. But they were not identifying these mental health issues in any consistent way. This was the challenge that most motivated me to create the model and a software program that provided DUI programs and treatment facilities with the tools to provide evidence-based treatment that could foster recovery and identify and address mental health factors. I'm extremely proud of the San Diego State's clinical team that has long been an advocate in this area and is committed to these issues. I now leave this continuation of this important work to the next generation of social workers. If our communities are safer because we have reduced the incidences of DUIs, if individuals attempting recovery now have a better understanding of what will contribute to a successful recovery, and if counselors now have a treatment guide to help them work with clients, and if mental health issues are routinely recognized and addressed in addiction treatment, then I feel something has been accomplished and my time has been well spent. Thank you for your acknowledgement and recognition.
I'd like to present Georgie her award.
Our next presenter, Dr. Marvin Southard, a social worker, is the director of the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, a position he has held since 1998, and a position in which he leads the largest public mental health system in the country, serving over 200,000 clients annually in one of the most ethnically diverse counties in the nation. Dr. Southard, would you come to the podium to introduce 2014 inductee Marilyn Flynn?
Esther told me that I had 3 or 4 minutes, so clearly she did not want me to talk about Marilyn Flynn's distinctions, achievements, and accomplishments, because I would need a much bigger time than that. So instead, I thought I would talk first about one of Marilyn's weaknesses, and then an image that weakness has brought forth for me. So Marilyn, and this is a weakness that I actually also suffer from, we both have the GPS chip in our brains slightly disabled. So Marilyn and I have been lost together on 3 continents. The most interesting of those times was when we were wandering through an Israeli military base in a classified area. The guards did not look amused. But the time I'm thinking of was the time that we were wandering around in central Dublin. Central Dublin gave us the opportunity to walk and try to find our hotel, but the third time that we passed St. Patrick's Cathedral, we decided to go in. And when we went into St. Patrick's Cathedral, one of the things that I saw there was a stained glass window, and on this stained glass window, this was of the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. So I thought what I would share with you are the 7 gifts that Marilyn Flynn has given to the profession of social work. The first of those gifts is rigor. I think Marilyn has insisted both here at USC and at the University of Michigan that the work of social workers, both as research and as policy, should be as rigorous as any other scientific position. And I think that legacy of rigor in our work is something that Marilyn has given to us that will last a very long time. The second gift I'd like to speak of is a spirit of entrepreneurship. I think those of you who work with Marilyn at SC can testify to her entrepreneurial spirit in trying to make the most of whatever opportunities present themselves, but it's just not in her academic work that she does that. She does that also when she's working with the Network of Social Work Management and other groups that she gives her time to. She's always looking beyond the obvious to the new opportunities and the way to leverage those new opportunities in an important way. The third gift that Marilyn has given to our field is generosity. And this generosity is both personal and institutional. Marilyn has always been a person who has been willing to share resources and time and energy and intellect to advance our field to a new level. That has happened both locally, nationwide, and internationally. And that leads me to the fourth gift, which is an international perspective. I don't think there is anyone in our field who has done more to make social work strong as an international field rather than something that is just in the English-speaking world. Marilyn has reached out and engaged China and Korea and Mexico and Israel in efforts to make our field and what we have learned available to the whole world. The next gift I'd like to speak about is her search for root causes. As Marilyn looks at what we're trying to do in making social work powerful in changing things, she doesn't want us to pay attention to programs that merely put Band-Aids on things. She's looking for finding ways so that we look to the root causes of all of the problems that our communities face. And I think that legacy of investing in root causes will be one of the strongest things that she passes on. The sixth gift I'd like to speak of is her intense devotion to social justice. Now, that's not unusual in a social worker. I think all of us have a commitment to social justice. But Marilyn has made that commitment to social justice connected with those previous gifts that I've talked about. So it's social justice that looks at root causes, social justice that is entrepreneurial, social justice that is rigorous and not merely putting Band-Aids on little problems. And finally, the last gift that I'd like to talk about is her gift of partnership. Now, we talk a lot about partnership in our field, but sometimes when people talk about partnership, they talk about partnership, but what they really do is partnership means if there's credit, I'll take it. If there's blame, you take it. Marilyn has never been one of those. The partnerships that she engages in, some of them are easy partnerships, some of them are very difficult partnerships, but they all are conducted in a very honest and careful way. So these 7 gifts are the things that emanate from Marilyn Flynn's spirit, and that spirit and these gifts are the reason that she's been being inducted into this Hall of Distinction. I'm very honored to offer this to my friend Marilyn Flynn.
Gosh, he had me worried there talking about being lost, because I thought he was going to tell you a different story about what happened when we were lost in Dublin. But actually, the story I'd like to tell is not going into the cathedral, but what I remember, Marv, is standing outside the cathedral, and suddenly I watched Marv as he looks up, and there's a paragraph over the entrance to this beautiful church. It's all in Latin, and Marv starts reading it. And I looked at him and I thought, I knew he was a talented director of mental health, but my God, he reads Latin too. And I thought, this is the kind of qualified guy that we get in Los Angeles, and I was really proud to be with him. Well, I want to thank you so much for that, and I want to thank the board for the California Social Welfare Archives and the Hall of Distinction Committee. I had a joke I wanted to tell at this point, but my family won't let me. So I'm going right on to the next part of my talk. If any of you want to know what it is, I'll tell you in private. But election to the Hall of Distinction has great meaning to me for 3 reasons. When I first came to the School of Social Work in 1997, I met a woman called Frances Feldman. Frances died about 5 years ago at the age of 91 and was reported in Time magazine for her creativity and the impact that she had. She was a very active faculty member, emerita at the time I got there, literally until the day before she died. Among the many creative projects for which she was responsible was the California Social Welfare Archives, which was an effort to preserve and memorialize the great contributions to social good by California social welfare leaders, extending as far back as 1880. I have to tell you, she was very annoying. I was not interested in this activity at all. I thought it cost too much, and she showed up every year asking for resources at the end of the year, and I said yes simply because she was a force of nature. However, Frances, I've seen the light, because I really recognize, and I did learn, it was a tutelage actually from her, that we know the history of economic and economic and political development here in the West. We know this very well, but we understand much less about social workers who made this wild society out here a place, a community of caring men, women, and families. The archives and the Hall of Distinction make the creation of this social history possible, and I'm so grateful, deeply grateful, to be part of that narrative. The second reason that I am this has a great deal of meaning to me, is because I'm now involved with a small group of men and women who are interested in increasing increasing the influence and understanding of social work more broadly in the West. Because if you look at our history books, you'll see that they're largely written about the origins of social work at Columbia University and on the eastern shores of this continent. But we know that the future of the profession, the economy of the United States, our global relationships really lie along the Pacific Rim in Asia and in the Americas. So much more needs to be written about the development of social work in the West and especially the innovations that have been engendered here. In California is the world's 8th largest economy, and in that economy, we in this room and outside are both the prophets and the canaries in the mine for the 21st century. I believe we will be the source of social leadership on some of the greatest challenges confronting our society today. And finally, the reason that I'm really proud to be here is that I can share it with my family. My son Jim and his wife Carrie Ann and my wonderful grandson Declan. And to share this, together with you, my friends and my professional associates. Jan Lee, after 2 decades almost of friendship and work together, I'm so glad to see you here. And Marv and I have conspired more than I would like to see, and I'm really grateful for sharing this evening with you. And my thanks to our Board of Counselors from USC and others who were able to attend. So many people have worked with me through nearly 2 decades of my deanship at USC, and to them I owe every accomplishment attained by the school, Lynn and Jim Wind, and others who could not come today. So I found a quote that my family will let me use, and that is, so C.S. Lewis said that you're never too old to set another goal and to dream a new dream. I've always believed this, so just wait. There's more to come. Thank you.
Natalia Salinas, an active and valued leader within NASW California and chair of the Social Action Social Justice Council, is with us this afternoon to introduce Marilyn Montenegro, Social Work Hall of Distinction inductee, class of 2014. Natalia?
So I get to introduce my good friend Marilyn Montenegro, and again, I also did not plan to go over her resume with you all, and I was going to make some personal statements, and but I'm not as funny as Dr. Southard. And my husband's the comedian in my family. So I wanted to say a little bit about how I've gotten to know Marilyn. She writes for the NASW California News, as we all know, and I used to, when I became a member, I always used to go through articles looking for hers, and also Manny Gale, who are social action, social justice advocates, and so, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I don't usually speak in large crowds. So Marilyn continues to write. Unfortunately, Manny Gale no longer writes for NASW California News. And I remember when she won Social Worker of the Year award for California and then went on to win it for national. And this was really exciting to me because starting in the profession, I got to read about someone who was inspiring to me and kind of represented some of the things that I like about our profession, the social justice piece of it, and the kind of social worker that I was striving to be. And I think she well represented that. And I went around telling a bunch of social workers about it because I lived in Bakersfield at the time, which tends to be a little more conservative. And I was like, yes, so look at this. And at that time, I was involved with the NASW Kern unit, and we invited her over to come talk to us. And she gave a wonderful presentation to us, and then afterwards, we went out to lunch, and I got to know her some. And that was 12 years ago. And then after that, we continued contact, mostly through email. But occasionally, I'd get a phone call from Marilyn looking for resources outside of Southern California, which is where she has lived. And these phone calls always impressed me and surprised me, because how many social workers do you know of go out of their workplace and out of their community to use their own social capital, their own social networks, to find services for their clients wherever they might be going to? Because as women were coming out of prison and being paroled to different areas, she would make sure and have warm handoffs to her wherever they would land. So that was something I always admired and welcomed those phone calls. Then I moved to LA about 3 years ago, and I got to know Marilyn even better. Started making some more face-to-face contact with her, and she started joining. I run the Social Action, Social Justice Council, while myself and other great people, but I've been chairing the council for a while, and our councils have now been working collaboratively for a while, and so I got to know her better, and let's see, let me find where I'm at. Well, actually, I wanted to mention the most recent issue that we've been working on collaboratively is our effort to have NASW divest funds from Wells Fargo. And we've had some presentations at the, yeah, I'm glad that you guys applauded, some of you applauded for that, because I think this is a very important issue for our council still. And, you know, the crisis that occurred in 2008 just continues to hurt people of color and disadvantaged communities. And Wells Fargo was a huge perpetrator in that and has been found guilty of mortgage fraud and other things. And I think this is still something that's very important for us. One more fact about that before I move on. The Institute for Policy Studies in 2008 reported that the total loss for people of color due to subprime loans stemming from the mortgage crisis, the subprime mortgage loans, was the greatest loss of wealth for people of color in U.S. history. So, getting back to Marilyn Montenegro, I think there are a few social workers who really raise the bar for us to higher standards and morals and the way that we practice social work, and Marilyn is certainly one of these social workers. She goes against the current, and that is not something easy to do. Many of us probably know that, but she does it year after year, time and time again, and she certainly deserves our honor and recognition tonight, and certainly not because she works hard to get that, because if you know her or you get to know her, she is one of the most humble people you will get to know. But simply because she exemplifies our social work core values. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Marilyn Montenegro. Oh, and one last thing I want to say, Marilyn, I forgot to bring up a check. Our council was going to purchase a table today, but you know, when Marilyn got word of what we were wanting to do, she's like, wait a minute, that $500 would go so far in providing, you know, a van load of parolees or former prisoners to go lobby legislators in Sacramento, or a whole month's living at a sober living environment. I mean, she's just constantly thinking outside the box for her clients, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm humbled by the honor. I think that I'm being honored not so much for what I've accomplished, but for just perseverance over many, many years of trying to get things done, and often not very successfully. When I became a social worker, I thought that I would get access to resources. I'd get a book that would tell me how I could get things. I didn't ever get that book. And I found out that really what social workers were doing was being gatekeepers. There are limited resources in the SPA 8 where I work. There are going to be 141 houses for homeless people, which is really wonderful, except there's 6,000 homeless people in that spa. And so the gatekeeper gets to tell people, gee, you really don't qualify. You don't have a utility bill with your current address on it. You don't have a current California ID. You have a criminal history. And there is a sense of power because every once in a while for one of those 141 you can say yes and they're really grateful. So it's very tempting to use the power of no. And I've worked really hard not to do that, but to always say yes to my clients and to stand with them when they try to get basic needs met. And I'm often, usually, unsuccessful because there's not enough to go around. It's not that there isn't enough in the whole world, but there isn't enough in this system. And I've worked unsuccessfully to challenge some of those systems. The system that we live in that says that we must have growth and development rather than sustainability and balance. The system that values individual achievement over communal well-being. And it's something that I continue to challenge. I think that we really need to look at the economic system that we support and see if that is something that we want to continue to support. But I'm pleased to be working on some things where I hope to have some success. One of them is working with social action, social justice, to help the NASW chapter divest from Wells Fargo and to find a less toxic financial institution in this capital system. And I'm working with the Women's Council on trying to help the Board of Behavioral Science Examiners deal with people with criminal histories in a more social work friendly way, rather than saying, which is a social work cop-out, oh, we deal with that on a case-by-case basis. Because case-by-case often means I know the rules and you don't. And when you don't know the rules, you're at risk. So the board, I understand, took some action this morning, and that they're going to be exploring working with the board to make their rules more transparent and more friendly toward all of us. And lastly, I would like to say that one of the things I'm working on, a friend of mine was going to come today, and she said, well, I can't come because I'm working on Proposition 47, and I really want to be there. So when you get up to talk, will you tell people that Proposition 47 is important, that what it does is reduces 6 so-called crimes from felonies to misdemeanors, which means some people will serve less time and it'll be easier for those people to find work. So I'm doing that too today. And I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to be in community with people who struggle daily with the ethical burden that we face as social workers and struggle together for social justice. Thank you.
Dr. Joseph Nunn, Professor Emeritus, UCLA Department of Social Welfare, is a licensed clinical social worker with a background and interest in social work field education, juvenile justice and corrections, interagency collaboration, and issues related to cross-cultural practice and diversity in the workplace. He's also a member of the Hall of Distinction Committee. He is here today to introduce Dr. Alex Norman, a 2014 inductee into the California Hall of Distinction.
Congratulations to the inductees. Welcome to family members, friends, and colleagues. I have the honor of introducing my mentor, my colleague, and good friend, Dr. Alex Norman. Now, some of you may remember the late, great rhythm and blues singer, James Brown. James Brown had several names: Godfather of Soul, Soul Brother number one, Mr. Please, Please, Please himself, and hardest working man in show business. Well, we've got 4 names for Dr. Norman. The first is Dr. Alex Norman, professor, UCLA Department of Social Welfare. The second, which he gave to himself, the Peaceful Warrior. The third is Alex Norman, the Failure. And the fourth is Mr. Long Beach. First of all, Alex Norman, the professor. Alex was loved by students. When you were on campus, and I was his colleague, walking down the hallway, if it was break time, you see Alex surrounded by students. He was a strong advocate for community organization and macro practice, and never missed an opportunity to let you know that was his interest. He was also sought after around campus by faculty of color who came to him to discuss challenges that they were encountering in the academy. I frequently saw people in his office, and Alex was always there to add guidance. Now let me tell you about the Peaceful Warrior. Alex is a warrior for social justice. And yet, one summer, just before school was about to start, he said to me, "Joe, you know, I'm tired, man, of pushing so hard. I read a book this summer, and I'm going to go the way of the Peaceful Warrior." Well, it was about 2 or 3 faculty meetings into the year. I'm sitting in the room laughing because the Peaceful Warrior fell off the path. That's just one of his failures, but let me talk about another failure that Alex has. The brother has failed retirement. He has flunked retirement. There are a group of us who bike ride on Fridays, and you'll see us, there's a picture of us in the program. And Alex used to say, this is what he used to say, "My bike riding days are protected. Nothing will intrude on my bike riding days." No longer true. Any number of times, Alex has to miss bike riding because he's got something to do in the community, which leads me to mention his other name, Mr. Long Beach. Alex was involved in an enterprise zone project in Long Beach and absolutely fell in love with the city. So much so that he and his wife, Margie, which, by the way, that's his most important identity, his marriage to his wife, Margie. He's a husband, also a father and grandfather. But they moved to Long Beach, and Alex got involved. He's participated with the Gumbiner Foundation. He's co-authored the Status of Black Long Beach. He's involved in many, many ways, and keeps saying, "Hey, you know, I'm going to slow down." Just last Friday, we were out on the bike path. He didn't have a meeting that day, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to retire for reals." Long Beach, how many Long Beach people are here? Long Beach in the house? Don't worry about it, Long Beach. He can't stop. It's with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce Dr. Alex Norman.
You know, as I was sitting and thinking of what I might say, it just occurred to me that this is an individual award, but it really is a collective effort, because I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, going back 7 generations. I'm just 2 generations from slavery, so I'm the grandson of slave parents. And it's the context of my ancestors that drives my theme of social justice. But it's also infused with an appreciation for the support that I get from my family, my wife, Margie, and my daughters, and my son-in-law, Ken, and my granddaughter, my favorite granddaughter, and my favorite grandson. And they'll say, "Grandpa, you only have one." I say, "Yeah, but you're still my favorite." Yeah. And my granddaughter said, "Grandpa, you know your name is in here 10 times?" Yeah. But it's that kind of support, I think, that has allowed me to, as Joe says, flunk retirement. But you know, I think I'm at a point now where I'm not going to flunk retirement anymore because I'm not going to retire, you know. So Julie Meenan, who is here and has been saying, "You can't leave my board yet," you know, and I keep saying, "You ought to get somebody younger." And she says, "Yeah, but you can't leave my board yet." But as I think of the issue of social justice, it really is one in which I think of one of my mentors, and I've had many, but one of them was Whitney M. Young, Jr. And Whitney always said, there are 3 things that you should remember. First of all, remember who you are. Remember where you are, and remember why you are there. Because as you become engaged in the battle of social justice, it means that you're going to be engaging in transformative change. And by engaging in transformative change, you're challenging the powers that be. And as Frederick Douglass reminded us, power concedes nothing. It never has, and it never will. And I'd like to take this opportunity to issue a challenge to social work, that as we enter in this new phase of American culture, that we really champion the cause of those who are victimized by society, not just because they don't receive services, but because they get the short end of the stick. And there are many people who get the short end of the stick who are coming to us from faraway shores. And to that end, I'd like to mention my last failure, which I'm currently involved in, and that is to create a center for self-healing in Long Beach for the victims of the Khmer Rouge and their parents. Long Beach is the 2nd largest community of Cambodians outside of the country of Cambodia. And 30-some years after their resettlement, a recent study indicated that 51% of those sampled was suffering from depression and 61% from post-traumatic stress disorders. And so my colleague, Mark Coleman, and Laura Somm, who was a victim herself, are here to make sure that I continue to flunk retirement. And my colleague, William Crampon, who is part of my Rethinking Greater Long Beach, a community-based think tank in Long Beach, is here to ensure that I continue to flunk retirement. So, honey, I guess, you know, I'm never going to retire. And to that end, I want to look back on the contributions I've made, but to look forward, because in social justice, one is always thinking of giving forward, not of giving back. Thank you very much.
Dolores Rodriguez, MSW. is a current member of the California Social Work Hall of Distinction, class of 2010. In recognition of her innovative work in social services, particularly for the Latino community, her role in developing the Chicano Adoptions Unit within the Department of Adoptions, and in providing leadership in developing the, I even practiced this word, Trabajadores de la Raza, a flat accent, among other impressive activities during her career. She is with us today to introduce her friend and colleague, Helen Ramirez, a 2014 inductee into the Hall of Distinction.
Helen and I go back a long time. I think more years than either one of us want to recount. I have known Helen as a mentor, as a boss, as a colleague, as a friend, and as a comadre. And many of the accomplishments for which I was recognized were, and inducted into the Hall of Fame really were inspired from Helen. I won't review all her accomplishments that are listed in the program, because in a sense, they really don't tell who the real Helen is. And those of us who have worked with Helen and who have known her know who the real Helen is. Helen had, through all of her career and her accomplishments, I think there were two guiding principles that she passed on to all of us, and who also excuse me, inspired and led her to do what she has done for children. She's a strong advocate for children and families. And as head of the Department of Adoptions, I know that one of the concepts she instilled on all of us was that every child had a right to a permanent home and to a family. And to that end, she developed programs that were innovative, creative, and were really the first ones that were developed in the country and became models for the rest of the country. At that time, there were children who were considered unadoptable. These were children that were considered too old to be adopted, who because of their ethnic background, they were Black or Latino, they could not be adopted, or they had developmental disabilities, such as Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or other medical problems that, quote, made them unadoptable. Helen refused to accept that concept or that idea. So she developed programs that recruited families. She really believed that if you just let the community know what the need of children were, that the community would respond. So she initiated programs of recruitment. She made alliances with all the public media, newspapers, television, radio, to have the needs, have the public become aware of the need of these children for homes. Many of us on her staff, believe me, spent many weekends at public fairs, community affairs. We were in the parks with booths, manning booths, telling people about the need for children, for families. We learned to appear on television, we learned to appear on radio, we learned to be interviewed by print. Anywhere that there was an opportunity to let the community know, we were there, and Helen inspired us and trained us to do this. But she rose to the occasion. She wanted to make her concept of the right of a child to a family to be a reality. So she created and developed special units. She created the first bilingual, bicultural placement adoption unit in the country. And I think at one point she recruited all the Spanish-speaking graduates of USC and UCLA for that unit. She also established the Black Adoption Unit, which on the Black Festival, she recruited really very well-known personalities from the entertainment world to be spokesmen for these children. And she really placed children that really had been considered unadoptable. But she didn't forget the children for whom we were unable to find homes. So she established and developed an emancipation unit that prepared those children when they reached majority and had to leave foster care, that they also had to deal with the world. She instituted training programs for them, development programs that included continuing education, housing, employment, and even driver's licenses. So we all have that commitment and that belief that every child should have the right to a family and to a permanent home. The other concept that she also believes very strongly, that everything we did should be held to the standard of what is in the best interest of the child. And to best illustrate that, I'm going to tell a story that I don't know that Helen wants me to tell, but I'll tell anyway. We had a child in the Department of Adoptions, in the care of the department, that we were making plans for that child. A third party appeared and asked for custody of that child. After a study and evaluation of the family, the social worker decided that and recommended that it was not a good plan for the child, so rejected the plan. The case wound up in juvenile court, where the judge, unfortunately, ruled against the social worker's decision and ruled in favor of the contesting party. The social worker was very upset because it was not a good plan for the child. When Helen heard about it, she was head of the Department of Adoption. She personally appeared in juvenile court and appealed to the judge to reverse his order, stating it was not in the best interest of the child. The court refused and upheld the ruling. Helen advised the court that she was not complying with the order, that it was not in the best interest of the child. The court then threatened her with contempt of court and a fine. And Helen still said she's not complying with the order. The judge then said, okay, you're going to jail. You do not comply, you'll stay in jail until you comply with the order. Helen said, I would rather go to jail than risk the welfare of a child. Fortunately, our cooler minds prevailed. The judge was convinced to review again the social worker's recommendation. On reviewing the recommendation of the social worker, he reversed his order and freed jail. We were all ready to protest free jail. But you know, it taught all of us too, that what you do for one child eventually will help other children. Because that not only helped that child, but in future court hearings, more respect, more credibility was given to the social worker's recommendations, professionalism, and integrity. And that is one of the principles that Helen passed on to us. So Helen, I'm very honored to be able to present on behalf of the Hall of Distinction the award.
Thank you, Dolores. Believe me, your comments brought back many memories. So it is just wonderful to be here, and I really recall, for those of you old enough to remember what Jackie Gleason used to say on his program, how sweet it is. And it really is. I see family, and family, as I get older, I really appreciate more and more. I mean, you're just priceless. You don't know that, but you are. And I see friends who have become like family, and I see staff from the Department of Adoptions, and they bring back memories of a staff like Dolores gave you an impression that really were so great. And every time they went out in the community, I got all these calls about, oh, wonderful staff, are you really doing all those things? And I said, yes, we are. And it was just wonderful. And I remember it so great because those years were truly a Camelot for me, just wonderful. And I also know that these kinds of events just bring memories of people who have helped you along the way. And I'm a big Wizard of Oz fan, and I now see all these greeting cards that say, it's not where you're going, it's the people you meet along the way. And that's really how I feel in terms of my career, that there have been so many people who have helped me. And I won't name them all, but I will name my parents, because they so believed in education. And my years as an undergraduate at Fresno State and as a graduate at USC, you know, I just cannot be grateful enough for that. They opened doors of opportunities that gave me the opportunity to make the kinds of programs that I did. And to the comadres who are here today, this was a group of this is still a group of Latino social workers, Latinas, and believe me, in days when I thought, I'm gonna get out of this work, they would be of so much support and really wise counsel, and I'm forever grateful to them. Another thing that I think of today is just that there's so many memories that are evoked from just running into the people that I've seen today and so forth. And I often think of the good old days, and I've also think of an expression that I've heard, and that's that what the heart has once held, it will never lose. And I'm so grateful that for the memories the new memories that I have from today, that my heart will hold, and I'll look on in days and years to come and smile and be grateful for it. So I'm not one for long speeches, so I'll just thank CSWA for including me among the honorees today. And I also thank you all for attending, because I look at you and I'm still very proud to be a social worker. Thank you.
Over his career, he served as Dean of the USC School of Social Work, as a past president of the National Association of Deans and Directors of Schools of Social Work, assisted in the creation of the Institute for Advancement of Social Work Research, and the list of accomplishments goes on and on and on and on. Today he is with us to introduce his colleague, Dr. Fernando Torres-Gil, a 2014 Hall of Distinction inductee. Dr. Patti.
Congratulations to Marilyn, first of all, my successor. Marilyn, you've been there 17 years. You've built a magnificent school on top of that one that I left. I want my job back. 17 years, after all. No, but I'm here to introduce another one of our honorees tonight, Professor Fernando Torres-Gil. A 95-year-old anthropologist once told an interviewer for The New Yorker that she was tired of being old, and that being old was not a game for sissies. Well, I have come to understand that in a way that I didn't when I first read it. So I speak from some personal experience as I'm getting long in the tooth, but also, and maybe more importantly, because I help care for two siblings, respectively 86 and 93, both of whom with significant health issues and memory loss. When I see my brother and my sister, who have some resources, modest, I think about the millions of older people whose old age is complicated by lack of income, poor access to transportation, poor nursing home care, and so on. So why do I bring this up? Because our honoree today, Professor Torres-Gil, has spent a professional lifetime working to develop policies and support systems that ease the burdens for both the elderly and those who care for them. Imagine a world in which my brother and sister would be in a nursing home without hope, without alternatives, waiting to die. Though life is still challenging, bear with me a minute. Though life is still challenging, the network of supportive services that now exist allow them and countless millions in this country, the elderly, the option of staying in their homes near or with family with a modicum of safety, comfort, and dignity. Far from perfect, to be sure, but a gigantic leap from 40 years ago when Fernando began his advocacy on behalf of the elderly. Professor Torres-Gil, perhaps as much as any social worker, policy analyst, or gerontologist, has been responsible for changing the landscape and bringing support systems to millions of elderly and disabled people, especially people of color. As a voice for elderly Hispanics, for example, he is without parallel. If you ask anyone in the field of gerontology, they will tell you that Fernando has been a leader in transforming what we as a society, how we as a society now provide for our older citizens. As an academician and an academic dean, his research and scholarship have informed aging policy discourse over the last 4 decades, his policy and administrative work at the highest levels of government. And I give you Assistant Secretary of Aging for the Department of Health and Human Services, the director of a special congressional committee on the aged, a White House fellow, an advisor to 3 HHS secretaries. In all of these roles, he's been instrumental in shaping the policies and programs that mitigate the harshest realities facing older people, especially those in communities of color. So for all of this, Fernando, we warmly welcome you into the California Hall of Distinction, and congratulations on that honor.
Thank you, Rino, and thank you not just for those kind words, but thank you for having been a mentor, a coach, and a friend throughout my career, and for driving up from San Diego in that awful traffic. We appreciate you, and I appreciate you. And I want to thank all of you, certainly the California Social Work Archives, the Hall of Distinction, and all of you who have reinforced the importance of not just history, but acknowledging all those who have come before and all those who continue to provide leadership in social work and social welfare and social policy. I am honored to be here, and I must admit, I am also humbled to be in the company of incredible individuals like Georgi DiStefano and Marilyn Flynn and Marilyn Montenegro and Alex Norman and Helen Ramirez, excuse me. I almost wonder how I got into that exalted company. I thought maybe I was a filler to wind up the afternoon, but I appreciate what you have done and that you have included me. I took special note of the video that had been showing beforehand, and recognizing a number of individuals who I knew since I first got into the field 40 years ago that are no longer with us. And I think that also speaks to the incredible work that all of you, including Colleen and others and USC, have done to keep those archives going, to remember what they have contributed, to allow all those that have gone before to continue to be with us. And again, that is why I am just so humbled to be in that company. as we all know and has been spoken by so many of you, none of us can do this alone. We all need to be part of a village, a support system of those around us that enable us to continue to stay in the struggle. And in that respect, I am so fortunate to have family and dear friends who are here with me today. And my special tables are over here on this side with my sister and goddaughters and nieces and two special little babies that were getting a little restless, but they came to cheer on their abuelito. And the cute one over there is little baby Benji. Raise him up, Lynn. And our other little girl, Eva, has got a little restless. There she is over there with her dad. But all of us have special people in our lives, but certainly looking at these little special ones just remind us that the work we do now will also have to be the work we continue for their longevity and their lifespan and future generations of young persons who will also hopefully have a good old age and will benefit from our advocacy. Certainly our professional networks, and I'm proud to be a social worker teaching at UCLA and the great Department of Social Welfare, and I have my wonderful colleagues here at this table. And I even have some dear friends that I've known since grade school that have been aging together with me. And so it's just wonderful to have you all. My wife is not here because she's caregiving for her mom who has Alzheimer's, so she's just returning from Northern California. And thank you to the California State Legislature for the work you do on behalf of aging, disability, and long-term care. We truly appreciate that. So I just want to wind down by just making two very brief comments that I think go to the reason, the motivation, why we're in this field, why we care about others, why social justice and social change is in our DNA. On my part, like all of us, we're influenced by our parents and others. And just last week, October 20th, we celebrated what would have been my mom's 91st birthday. She passed away 6 years ago, but she's still with us. We go and visit her where she now resides. But I mention that because many, many years ago, growing up in Salinas, California, my mother faced her own circumstances, like so many families, having to, abandoned by her husband, having to raise 9 children as a single mother, having to swallow her pride and enroll in AFDC, the old Aid to Families with Dependent Children. Having no place to shelter her children, she moved into public housing. But that was not going to make her feel sorry or any less of a person. And so she instilled in us, and all of us, that one should give back regardless of your circumstances. One should always reciprocate, and that one can always rise above their circumstances. And I always remembered her best friends. They were social workers assigned to her to provide parenting, to help her navigate that system of public benefits and programs, to help her kids as they struggled through school. And it was social workers that made it possible for my mother to keep her 9 kids together as a family unit. And there is, fast forward 40 years later, all her 9 children are successful professionals. They have their families, they have their college degrees. And on October 20th, my sister and several of my siblings were there to honor her birthday, because the housing project we grew up in had been torn down by the Monterey County Department of Social Services, the Monterey County Department of Housing had torn down that housing project to replace it with a beautiful new residential village. And part of it included a beautiful new community center that would be there for the families and the kids for supportive services, a computer room, and all the ancillary programs that young families need as they're struggling. That is the Maria J. Torres-Gil Community Center. And you see, my mom, like our 5 honorees here, are legends, is a legend, as you are legends. Because once her kids grew up and started being a little more independent, she started volunteering as a translator for Monterey County Department of Social Services. Even though she had a 6th grade education, she was smart, determined, and she became an eligibility worker. And she retired heading up the General Assistance Program for the Monterey County Department of Social Services. So how could I not become a social worker with that kind of history? But I only mention this story, which is just one of thousands that you have all experienced, because I think it speaks to why we are here, why we honor individuals, why we remember history and the past, why we continued forward to encourage and teach and mentor young persons to pursue this noble profession. And I will end with my own particular quote, which I think all of you have heard, but it exemplifies why I've pursued my career at the macro level in government and public policy as a social welfare, social work advocate. And it's a quote that's been repeated many times but bears repeating, by Hubert Humphrey. The moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, the twilight of life, the elderly, and the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. So let's continue the struggle. Let's stay with it. Thank you for this tremendous honor, and thank you for including me. Thank you.
So until then, keep up with us on Facebook and YouTube. And in behalf of the CSWA, thank you and congratulations to all of the newest members of the Hall of Distinction. Thank you.
I've been a social worker, and I've always loved social work. And teaching and social work have always been the loves of my life. And sometimes you almost feel like you're working in a vacuum. You're there, and you're fighting for, social work-related issues, and you forget that there's a community behind you of social workers that are really cheering you on. And so at the end of my career, this is just a wonderful thing to experience. The acknowledgement of so many years of, doing battle, so to speak, for the issues that I think are important.
So this was a great event. It was a wonderful, all these people that received the awards, very humble, very giving, and good role models for the younger people that were here today to listen. And to honor people and work so hard just as all their life and doing these important things. It's a privilege to be here.
So being a part of this is an extraordinary experience to participate and to see each year the inductees as they come and explain what they've been doing in terms of this history. I learned so much tonight that I thought I had seen it all in the nomination material, but to hear it directly from these persons is just an extraordinary experience.
As a student, this event means a lot to me because it gives me really hope for the future of my career, and that differences can be made and you can be an agent of change and really have an impact on this world. And I think it's of vital importance that we recognize not only the people, but more importantly, the work that they've done.
Being here tonight reaffirms my own feeling and inspiration of why I chose to be a social worker.
This has been one of the most exceptional inductions. We have really, I think as a profession, it just increases my pride. This is an important event because it gives us the history, living history of our founders, our mentors, and people who have really made changes in this profession.